This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Yunxiao's slap landed precisely on the red-haired man's acupuncture point. As if a surging river had suddenly been cut off, the water suddenly rose, and one of the red-haired man's arms was stretched out to become extremely thick. Outsiders might have thought that it was some powerful palm technique, but the red-haired man knew exactly what it was. His eyes were filled with fear, and he felt as if his entire arm was about to explode. At that moment, Yunxiao gently pulled, and the red-haired man's body shot toward the other two like a swordfish. At the same time, his blocked aperture suddenly loosened, and his primordial energy gushed out like a dam that had burst. Boom, boom, boom. Elemental energy exploded from the red-haired man's palm, causing the entire hall to shake. Guan Xingyang and the other 8 stars Martial Venerable were taken aback. They had just thrown out a casual palm attack to block Yunxiao's retreat, but they did not expect to be hit by the red-haired man's attack, which was beyond their ability. Shocked, they hurriedly increased the strength of their palm wind, but it was too late. Bang! The two of them were hit by the palm at the same time and were sent flying. They turned into 2 meteors and pierced through Zhu Yuanxian. On the other hand, the red-haired man was safe and sound. He was still in the same posture as before, but cold sweat was dripping down his forehead, and he felt a chill in his heart. If Yunxiao had not opened his aperture just now, his entire arm would have exploded. Now, he felt a chill run down his spine, and he did not even dare to move when he sensed Yunxiao behind him. What's going on? Everyone was shocked. From the looks of it, the red-haired man had accidentally injured his companion. However, they were all martial honors, and their control over their strength was already extremely fine. It was impossible for such a huge mistake to happen. Red-haired man, what are you doing? The 8 stars Martial Venerable in the distance rushed over, glaring at the red-haired man. He wanted to settle the score with him. Stop. It's this kid's doing. A ray of light rushed over and blocked in front of him. It was Guan Xingyang, who said coldly, "This kid's technique is extremely exquisite. He's using force to counter force." What? The 8 stars Martial Venerable was dumbfounded for a moment. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Not to mention the person involved, even everyone present felt that it was unreal. No matter how strong one's skill was, there was a limit. How could he have done it so easily and circled around 3 people of the same level? The red-haired man's forehead was also covered in cold sweat. He was the most clear that it was not as simple as borrowing force to counter force. Good. It seems that I was wrong. Break! Guan Xingyang shouted, and the entire hall shook as if a meteorite had fallen in and exploded. He threw out a punch and then charged forward, leaving a long light trail behind him as he went straight for Yunxiao's forehead. This kind of powerful large-scale attack could not be suppressed by a technique. Everyone's heart was in their throats at this moment. Everyone had a contemptuous look on their faces earlier. Coupled with the dramatic scene, they all felt that they had not seen it clearly. At this moment, they all widened their eyes and stared at it. Yunxiao's eyes narrowed as he gently pointed out a finger, which seemed slow but was actually fast, and directly touched the wind generated by Guan Xingyang's fist. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air in shock. Such a fierce and domineering punch, even if a profound-level weapon was used to block it, it would still shake by 30%. Wouldn't a finger directly explode? Liang Yuanji was also shocked as if he had been electrocuted. His martial artist intuition told him that Guan Xingyang was in trouble. There was no basis for this intuition, but he knew it must be accurate. Bang! Guan Xingyang suddenly felt that his fist had smashed into a boundless and vast space. It was as if his fist had hit an empty space, but the power of the fist wind was being absorbed limitlessly. His finger seemed to be a black hole. Shock. What? Frightened, Guan Xingyang hurriedly pulled back his fist without any resistance. He only took a few steps back in shock. How is it? The remaining 8 stars Martial Supreme frowned and asked. Everyone had seen Guan Xingyang's punch clearly, but no one knew what had happened when the last two moves collided. No spiritual pressure had spread out, and they only felt a faint fluctuation of origin power before Guan Xingyang stopped. Guan Xingyang was shocked. He gave Yunxiao a horrified look and said in a deep voice, "Lord Feiyang's strength is astonishing. I'm convinced." Voila. This caused an uproar among the crowd. Although they did not know what had happened, they knew that Guan Xingyang had suffered. Other than shock, there was also joy in Liang Yuanji's eyes. His previous low spirits were swept away, and he became proud. It seemed that he had good judgment and did not misjudge someone. Elder Yan also stopped smoking and looked at the scene with a serious face. Was it really that evil? I don't believe it. The remaining 8 stars Marshal Supreme frowned. He looked at Red Hair and Guan Xingyang, who had stopped talking, and snorted, "Unless I'm convinced." Swish. The blade light cut through the air. The 8 stars Marshal Venerable had learned his lesson from the previous 2. Without making any physical contact with Yunxiao, he slashed down directly from the air. Yunxiao did not retreat. He just stood there with no change in his expression. He really didn't need to think much to deal with these people. Boom. The saber beam hit him directly. To everyone's horror, the saber beam pierced through Yunxiao's body and directly tore off half of Juyuan Pavilion. What's this? Everyone was so shocked that they jumped to their feet. Yunxiao was standing still, which completely shocked everyone. The 4 9 stars Marshal Supremes, led by Liang Yuanji, were all horrified, and they could not see through Yunxiao's movements at all. The 8 stars Marshal Venerable was also stunned. He held a big ringed saber in his hand and stood there, not knowing what to do. A cold look flashed across Yunxiao's face as he said, "3 moves have passed. It's my turn. As long as the 3 of you can take this move of mine together, I'll give up the position of vice captain to you." As soon as these words came out, the 3 people's faces suddenly changed. The previous sneers and ridicule had long been swallowed into their stomachs, as if they were facing a great enemy. The 3 of them raised their origin power to the peak and stood together, joining forces to resist the enemy. Although it might seem a little exaggerated to outsiders, all 3 of them had exchanged a blow with Yunxiao and understood how terrifying he was. So, they did not dare to underestimate him. Yunxiao raised his hand, and without any fancy moves, he slapped down like he was swatting a fly. Boom. The space trembled, and the remaining half of the Ju Yuan Xian collapsed with a loud bang. The 3 extremely cautious people felt the entire space shatter, and their bodies were drawn into the energy storm, constantly being stirred. The 3 of them struggled to hold on for a moment before their minds went blank and they completely lost consciousness. To outsiders, the 3 of them were like fallen leaves in a storm, floating far away and disappearing from everyone's sight. Gulp. After a few breaths of silence, only the sound of swallowing with difficulty could be heard. Everyone was in the ruins, and the silence was terrifying. Cold sweat broke out on Liang Yuanji's forehead. It was at this moment that he realized how terrifying Yunxiao was. This man's combat strength was definitely above his, and he was probably at least a martial emperor. After his shock, he was even more elated. With such a person in their team, everyone's safety would be even more guaranteed. However, Liang Yuanji was still in a daze. He wiped his cold sweat and said, "Lord Feiyang, the 3 of them." "Don't worry," Yunxiao said. "They're just unconscious. They'll be fine, provided that they're treated in time." Liang Yuanji was sweating profusely. He hurriedly ordered a few martial artists to go and treat them. The 3 of them were 8-star Martial Supremes and were definitely the main force. "Who else has any objections to me being the vice captain?" Yunxiao asked. No one made a sound. As his gaze swept across them, they hurriedly lowered their heads, not daring to make direct contact with him. In particular, the martial artists who had laughed loudly earlier were even more apprehensive, afraid that they would be retaliated against. Lord Feiyang's strength is shocking. He is worthy of being the vice captain. Liang Yuanji was very pleased with himself, secretly praising his own judgment. Elder Yan seemed to have just come back to his senses. He took out his pipe and took a few puffs. It's not just shocking. It's beyond our imagination. I'm afraid that even a martial sovereign of the 9 heavens is no better than this. Liang Yuanji was overjoyed. With Lord Feiyang here, our team's strength will far exceed the other teams. It'll be much safer. The Gathering Yuan Pavilion has been destroyed, so let's all gather here today. As 3 people are injured, we'll discuss splitting them up in a few days. When everyone heard that, their depressed mood was immediately lifted. The stronger the leader was, the better it would be. Everyone gave Yunxiao a friendly look before they left one after another. Yunxiao beckoned to Liang Yuanji, then went straight back to his residence. He took out the bell that Baosheng had left behind and lightly shook it a few times. A moment later, a beam of light flew into the courtyard. It was Baosheng, who was still wearing the same light yellow gauze robe. When she saw Yunxiao, she quickly bowed and said, "I've made Lord Feiyang wait for a long time." "Let me ask you," Yunxiao said. "Who is that Liang Yuanji?" Baosheng was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "My lord, you must have met with Lord Yuanji. He is an expert from the Jade Drop sect of the Eastern region and has been arranged to lead the team. It is said that the group led by Lord Yuanji is the strongest among all the itinerant cultivators." "Oh, I see. The atmosphere in Blazing Light City seems to be much more tense than before," Yunxiao said. "Is it because of the war in the front?" A look of surprise flashed across Baosheng's face. She hesitated for a moment before saying, "The sea race has indeed launched quite a large attack in this period of time. The experts of my race have retreated another 30-some kilometers." Her depressed expression was swept away, and she squinted her eyes and smiled. "Don't worry, my lord. Haitian Town is tens of thousands of miles away from here. With 30 miles as a line of defense, we won't be able to reach Laiguang City even in hundreds of years." Yunxiao sweated in his heart. This girl knew nothing at all, and how could the situation of the battle be measured in this way? He was afraid that once the war at the front line collapsed, the Sea Tribe army would come ashore in large numbers and sweep across more than half of the cities in the eastern region. "Is there any other news?" Yunxiao asked. "What else?" Baosheng thought for a while, shook her head, and suddenly added, "My lord, the small team led by Lord Yuanji might be transferred to the front line soon. The teams that you formed before you came have all gone, so it might be your turn next." Yunxiao's face was expressionless. He had basically expected all this, and he also wanted to go to the front line as soon as possible to see what was going on. After sending Baosheng away, he did not have the mood to cultivate in the short period of time left. Instead, he began to focus on refining those profound-level weapons. Especially the Devil Sky Armor, which required a large amount of Devil Chi to activate its power. Now that he could turn Emperor Chi into Devil Chi at will, he had the capital to truly control the Devil Sky Armor. Each of the profound-level weapons that he had obtained from Mount Meru had a great origin and infinite power. As his strength gradually increased, these profound-level weapons also began to display their power one by one. 7 days later, a crisp bell rang in the training room. The pendant behind the door was not only flashing with purple light, but it was also shaking violently. It was an emergency call. Yunxiao immediately rose to his feet and arrived at the city lord's mansion in a few breaths. With a sweep of his divine sense, he found Liang Yuanji and flew down. Liang Yuanji welcomed him with joy and said, "Lord Feiyang is number one." Yunxiao's strength had already attracted his greatest attention. "Are you going to the front line?" Yunxiao asked. The smile on Liang Yuanji's face turned serious as he nodded. "That's right. This time, a total of 30 teams were sent at the same time. There are 3 first-class teams and they are all local sections. The Bai Luo sect that I'm in is one of them. There are a total of 9 second-level teams, 5 of which are made up of individual cultivators like us, and each team is made up of 20 people. The other 4 teams are all local sects and forces of the eastern region. No matter how many people there are, they form their own teams. The remaining 20 teams are made up of rank 3 and 4 existences." Yunxiao immediately understood that the division of ranks was based on cultivation base. Since their team was divided into 2 levels, the first level naturally belonged to martial sovereigns. Such a large group, how many people are there in total? 933 people. Our team's name is Warblade, Liang Yuanji said with a bitter smile. Yunxiao's face darkened as he said, teleporting so many people at once, could it be that there's a sudden change in the battle? Liang Yuanji's expression was equally ugly as he said, half a month ago, the Sea Race launched a surprise attack and destroyed the teleportation formation that they had set up temporarily. Now, they have just finished setting up the teleportation formation and are urgently asking for help. Therefore, Lord Wenbojun is prepared to send over half of the strength that the entire Blazing Light City has accumulated. I'm afraid that there will be a hard battle once we get there. As the two of them were talking, the members of the team soon arrived. The 3 8-stars martial venerables were among them, but they avoided Yunxiao's eyes, not daring to look him in the eye. Liang Yuanji frowned. It's a critical moment now. Everyone, let go of any grudges you have. When you're at the front line, only orders are given. The remaining 18 people had been divided into 6 groups according to their own situation. At the same time, a group leader had been selected. The group leaders would take care of each other. The group leaders would be the 6, 8, and 9-star martial supremes. The entire square was filled with people, and all sorts of noises could be heard. The sect disciples were all laughing together, while most of the rogue cultivators were standing alone, looking around. With a sweep of his divine sense, Yunxiao knew everyone's situation and cultivation base. The 3 first-class teams at the front were the most conspicuous. They were the Blue Sky sect, where Liang Yuanji was from, as well as the 9th Moon Mountain and the Ulti Mystery sect. The people in them ranged from martial emperors to martial emperors, and they were all from the entire sect. Everyone, be quiet. Suddenly, a voice came from the sky, and a 5-colored light appeared in the sky, slowly landing on the general's platform next to the city lord's mansion. When Bojun's figure was revealed, he was full of spirit and had an imposing appearance, with the style of a grandmaster. As soon as he appeared, the entire square fell silent, and everyone's eyes focused on him. When Bojun said, "Everyone, I won't say much about the current situation. I won't say any hypocritical words either. Those demon beasts in the sea bullied us once decades ago. They think we are easy to bully. I don't care about the attitude of the Holy Region or the other 3 regions. I only know that in the Eastern region, if any sea beast dares to climb up without permission, I will completely smash it into a pulp. He'll be smashed into meat paste." Dozens of people shouted at the same time. They were the team leaders, including Liang Yuanji. He'll be smashed into meat paste. Let those low-level things get back to the ocean. Immediately, the entire square was filled with shouts. Everyone's blood was surging. Moreover, the more people there were, the more daring they would be. Looking at the densely packed people, everyone had a feeling of certain victory in their hearts. When Bojun smiled and gestured for her to be quiet, "We'll let the Sea Tribe see our true strength, and let the Holy Region, who didn't dare to fight us in the past, see our strength. We'll leave everything to you." He bowed deeply and paid his respects. Everyone's blood started to burn as they cheered wildly, feeling as if they had already won. But there were also many calm warriors, such as Yunxiao and Elder Yan. The former looked calm and unruffled, while the latter was smoking his pipe with a contemptuous smile on his face. Elder Yan looked at Yunxiao with interest and said with a smile, "Lord Feiyang's heart is very firm." "Not as good as you, Elder Yan," Yunxiao said with a smile. "I'm not as good as you." Elder Yan shook his head and said seriously, "I'm still far from Lord Soaring. Lord Feiyang is truly wise and courageous, while I'm just a coward who has become more timid as I get older in the martial world." With that, he picked up his pipe and began to smoke again while observing Yunxiao's expression. To his disappointment, Yunxiao showed no expression. They quickly gathered and began a large-scale teleportation. Only 20 people could go at a time, and the number of people in a small team was also determined by the maximum number of people in the teleportation array. On the platform, when Bojun was smiling as he looked at the people below swarming toward the teleportation area like a long snake. A man behind him looked down with a serious expression and said softly, "I hope this can alleviate the crisis at the front line." The man's face was revealed. He was delicate and young, but his eyes were shining with wisdom. He was Tang Qing's son, Tang Xan. When Bojun smiled didn't falter as he replied, "Difficult." "Oh. Why do you say that, Vice Sect Master?" Tang Xan was surprised and asked in confusion, "There are nearly 1,000 people here. The entire eastern region has been mobilized." When Bojun said in a soft voice, "The war is still in its initial stage. The sea race has only sent some low-level clans to attack. We are also organizing these scattered soldiers. The true strength of the two races has not been shown yet. It is difficult to judge who is stronger and who is weaker." Tang Xan frowned. What should the next stage be? When Bojun said, "All the royal forces of the East Sea have been revealed. By then, your father will definitely lead the entire eastern region to fight against them. If this situation escalates further, the four seas will join forces and the world will be in chaos." Tang Xan's face turned serious and said, "According to what the Vice Sect Master said, this war will never end unless the Sea Tribe retreats. But their request is too outrageous. They want to find a human girl. We've cast various spells, but there's no such person in Haitian town." When Bojun smiled bitterly. "The sea race has mobilized so many people to attack. I think that girl is real. But she must have left the eastern region." Tang Xan's face showed a strange expression and said coldly, "Humph. According to all the clues, it must have been Li Yunxiao who took it away." When Bojun shook his head and said, "I don't think so. We've checked Yunxiao's tracks before he entered the world. He has no one with him. Moreover, when he confronted the Sea Tribe in Haitian town that day, it was very likely that he had deceived them in exchange for a moment of peace. The possibility of the girl getting lost was very high. Since she was able to escape from the hands of the Sea Tribe, she naturally won't be easily captured. In any case, Li Yunxiao is involved in this situation," Tang Xan said. "If he had reported the situation in Haitian town in time when the incident happened, we could have prepared earlier and not been defeated again and again." When Bojun nodded and said, "Of course we have to capture Li Yunxiao. Unfortunately, we didn't know that he was involved in this matter at that time, so we transferred Fuichuan and the 5 Hall Masters back, wasting the opportunity in Fengling City. It's too late to regret now, so we can only find a way to deal with the immediate crisis. But these Sea Tribe people are too stubborn, and they insist on finding the girl. It's really a headache." He shook his head repeatedly, his face full of distress. "Humph, then let's beat them until they get the hell back." Tang Xan's face flashed with arrogance and said coldly, "They really think that we humans are easy to bully. This is the best time for father to take over. I must teach these sea beasts a lesson." When Bojun only smiled bitterly and didn't say anything. A large number of experts were teleported away one by one, and soon it was Yunxiao's Battleblade team's turn. The 20 of them stood on the teleportation array. A beam of light lit up and they quickly entered the space tunnel. Their surroundings were pitch black. In just a few breaths' time, he saw a ray of light appear on the ground. After the 20 of them stood still, they immediately began to observe the scene in front of them. The huge city was extremely simple and crude, with only some solid metal walls. The city was almost empty, but it was spacious enough. Liang Yuanji started to contact one of the people in charge and exchanged communication jade pendants. The person in charge simply said, "The city is created by an array artifact, so it's very simple. You can find a place in the city to stay and cultivate in peace while waiting for the orders from the higher-ups." Yunxiao looked around and saw that the entire city was divided into 2 halves, and the newcomers they had teleported here occupied a small part of the city. In the other half of the area, many cultivators were cultivating in groups. There were also many people flying here and there, busily.